Hello, my friend. My name is Amelia. The narrative I'm going to tell is not intended to elicit sympathy, but rather to convey a lesson that I paid for with my own happiness, family, and former peace of mind. This is a narrative about errors, suffering, regret, and the irrevocable effects of deeds. It's a narrative that has left an indelible mark on my heart, and I have to live with it every day. My name is Amelia. I'm 30 years old, and I reside in Virginia Beach, a lovely coastal city in the United States that has been my home for most of my life. For me, Virginia Beach is more than simply a destination. It's a location filled with memories that helped shape who I am today. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can keep giving you intriguing, genuine tales like these. Also, don't forget to watch this video till the finish and like it since the tale will be quite entertaining. Please click the like button to express your support. I recall spending my childhood afternoons sitting calmly on the warm sand, listening to the relaxing sound of the waves breaking on the shore, and staring at the limitless blue sky that seemed to extend forever above me. It seemed as if I could breathe in the air of tranquility, as if every gust of wind and wave slamming against the rocks was communicating with me in a language only my soul could comprehend. The ocean, with its beauty, mystery, and immensity, has become an essential part of my existence. It served as the backdrop to my boyhood, instilling in me a love of the sea and its legends. From a young age, I was attracted by the bustle that surrounds the beach, the bustling streets crowded with visitors, and the exciting talk of people from various areas sharing their experiences from all over the world. This continual movement piqued my attention. I wanted to hear, see, and comprehend more. I aspired to be a guide, someone who could not only show people the beauty of my birthplace, but also the history and culture of the locations I visited. I saw myself taking people on a journey, showing them the world through my eyes, and sharing my affection for the places I treasured. Becoming a tour guide was not an effortless task. When I graduated from high school, I was determined to turn my goals into reality. However, the journey ahead was far from straightforward. I faced numerous challenges and lacked support from others. I worked long, arduous hours in part-time jobs, sacrificing my nights and weekends to save money for the courses I needed to pursue my ambition. The financial hardship was great, yet I remained committed. My ambition became a reality 7 years ago, after years of hard work and sacrifice. I've officially become a tour guide. It was not simply a job for me, it was a calling. Not only did it give me an income, but it also satisfied my need to share the beauty of the world, and I was doing what I enjoyed. Looking back, I realize how much I've matured, not only in age, but also in my capacity to overcome obstacles and failures. Virginia Beach laid the groundwork for me to build upon. I had transformed my passion into a meaningful job, and I felt pleased with my accomplishment. But everything changed the day Carlos entered my life. He was a tall, graceful, confident Spaniard, possessing a charisma that could captivate anyone. He arrived in Virginia Beach for a brief visit, bringing with him the warmth of the Mediterranean. We met for the first time on one of my excursions. His eyes lit up as I discussed the region's rich history. I could see he was really interested in what I had to say. His inquiries were not only superficial, they were insightful, and something about his interest compelled me to prolong the conversation. What began as simple banter quickly evolved into deep, important discussions. Carlos had a way of making me feel unique, as if I were the only one in the world. His words resonated deeply with me, and our connection was evident. He frequently spoke about his homeland in Spain telling anecdotes about the culture and people there. I, in turn, shared my own recollections with him, my love of Virginia Beach, the seaside, and my youth by the water. It didn't take long for me to understand we shared a deep relationship that transcended cultural barriers and distance. We were connected in ways that I couldn't articulate. After a year of romantic moments and memorable memories, Carlos proposed to me on a balmy afternoon as the sun sank, painting the beach in lovely tones of red and gold. The little ring on his fingers gleamed in the dusky light, but his eyes flashed even brighter. Something in his eyes told me he was willing to spend the rest of his life with me. I said yes, and we started our journey together. We settled into a tiny, charming cottage near the ocean. The sound of the waves became a frequent companion. Every night, we'd sit together, laugh, speak, and just enjoy one another's company. It was the life I'd always desired, one filled with love, warmth, and pleasure. Then came the greatest delight of our lives, the birth of our daughter, Sophia. She had the most stunning brown eyes, just like Carlos. I sobbed the instant she was born, not from pain, but from the overwhelming emotion of it all. She was live proof of our love, a miracle I never believed I deserved, and I told myself I would treasure her every day. Carlos started as a manager at a famous hotel in the city, and his career took off swiftly. He was an outstanding leader, and his ability to connect with others gained him the respect of those around him. My life grew busier with a newborn, but I continued to work as a tour guide. It was more than simply a job. It was my passion. Every day, I enjoyed sharing the beauty of the sea with the tourists. But most of all, I enjoyed returning home to Carlos and Sophia, where laughter and affection greeted me. For a while, everything appeared ideal. We were living the life we had always wanted, and I was confident that nothing could ruin it. However, life changes, and it wasn't long before the reality of marriage became apparent. After the initial euphoria of our union faded, we were preoccupied with work, obligations, and the continual pressures of daily life. Carlos grew increasingly engrossed in his job. His lengthy work trips and many meetings left little time for us. Meanwhile, I was balancing a busy tour schedule and the obligations of parenting. We were like two planets in distinct orbits, gradually moving away without realizing it. At first, I tried to believe that it was simply a phase, and that things would improve soon. However, dinners alone in front of the television, as well as waking up in an empty room without a welcome, quickly became the new normal. Our discussions were intermittent, with polite queries and vague ideas that neither of us had the time to carry out. There were times when I would sit in our darkened home, listening to the waves outside the window. The song that once brought me calm has now exacerbated my loneliness. The place I used to call home suddenly seemed like an empty shell, devoid of the emotions and relationships that characterized it. I felt lost and distant from the love I believed would endure forever. The emptiness I experienced intensified with each passing day, gnawing at me like a relentless monster. And then, in a moment of weakness, I made a decision that changed everything. Although it was a sudden decision, its impact was profound, shattering everything that had previously held significance for me. I never expected that a stranger, someone from outside my environment, would have such a significant impact on my life. Julian entered my life one summer day when I was leading a group of visitors on a tour of the beach near my residence. Julian was tall and muscular, with piercing blue eyes that appeared to embody the soul of the sea. He didn't stand out in a big manner, yet there was a peacefulness to him and a charming grin that pulled me in. We had a light chat at first, but something about him stood out. He wasn't only interested in my stories, He reacted with such care that I couldn't help but be intrigued. We chatted about the sea and life in Virginia and about his native nation, France. Julian's words had a magical air to them, stirring something deep within me, a sense of familiarity I couldn't quite place. Julian found excuses to linger beyond the tours and inquire about little details, such as where to find a decent coffee shop or a quiet beach route. Then, one evening, when the sun went down, he invited me to sit on the beach and watch the sunset. I could not say no. We sat in peace, watching the sky transform from gold to crimson and feeling the soothing sea wind on our skin. Inside, a fire began to blaze, which I could not ignore. Julian gradually became the centerpiece of my daily routine. We didn't simply converse at the beach. We visited the city together, viewing familiar sights through his eyes. There was a sense of freedom and impetuousness at those times, something I hadn't felt in years. When I was with Julian, I forgot about everything, including the loneliness of my empty house. Carlos and I were growing apart, and I had hidden aspects of myself. It did not remain innocent for long. Julian clasped my hand one evening while the waves softly caressed the coast. That one touch triggered something in me, burning away all sensible thinking. He drew me closer, and before I could respond, his lips were on mine. The kiss was strong, as if he had been waiting his entire life to give it. In that instant, all of my boundaries fell apart, and I realized I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't control myself. I flung myself into his arms. The days that followed were full of remorse and desire. Julian provided me with enthusiasm, something I had been missing in my marriage. But with each second I spent with him, the weight of my treachery became greater. The picture of Carlos, my loyal husband and our daughter's father, continued to torment me. I attempted to excuse my conduct, telling myself that I was only looking for what I had lost in my marriage: tenderness, connection, and the sensation of being loved. But deep down, I realized there was no justification for what I was doing. Julian wasn't the solution to my difficulties. He was a powerful force that swept through my life, causing nothing but destruction in its path. Every time I said farewell to Julian after our encounters, I felt torn. I wanted to quit, but I lacked the strength. Julian was like an addiction that I couldn't shake, even knowing it was bad. He was kind and compassionate, making me feel special, but I knew it couldn't last. It was only a temporary retreat. I would soon have to confront the repercussions of my actions. The shame became more every time I saw Sophia. Her innocent eyes, so similar to Carlos's, stared at me with unshakable faith. I pondered whether she would ever forgive me if she discovered the truth one day. Will Carlos, the guy I swore to love forever, be able to forgive me for betraying him? The questions gnawed at me, making me understand that Julian's devotion could never outweigh the harm I had inflicted. I began avoiding Julian, although it was not easy. He texted, called, and arranged to meet me. Every time I saw his name on my phone, a mixture of terror and want raced through my heart. I knew I had to stop it, but I lacked the strength to say goodbye. Julian was not a horrible person. He entered my life at a time when I was at my weakest and most vulnerable. I let this happen, and I was the one who had to deal with the repercussions. When Julian wanted to meet again that evening, I realized I had to make a decisive choice. As the sun set and the sky turned a lovely pink, I stared into his eyes, the same ones that had previously drawn me in. But now, their eyes simply caused me misery. I informed him that we couldn't continue. Julian was silent. His eyes were filled with bewilderment, but his expression tightened. He did not become furious or yell. Instead, he posed a question that ripped me apart. "Are you happy?" That question crushed me. I couldn't respond because, deep down, I knew the answer. Julian went that night, bringing with him sentiments I will never forget. But I realized that in order to salvage my marriage and defend what was most essential in my life, I needed to let him leave. Even though it hurt my heart, it was the only thing I could do for myself, as well as for Carlos and Sofia. When I discovered I was pregnant, my emotions were chaotic. The news should have been joyful, a miracle in the middle of my confusing, stormy emotions. Nonetheless, I was gripped with anxiety, doubt, and perplexity. I wasn't certain who the father was. Carlos, my husband, the guy I swore to be devoted to, or Julian, the man who rekindled a spark inside me that I had long forgotten. My thoughts raced as I attempted to piece together the facts. Could this be Carlos? Or were it the passionate times I'd spent with Julian? I didn't know how I was going to tell Carlos, or if I'd ever have the courage to confess. What if he rejects me? What if he can't forgive me? Knowing that my life had devolved into a tangled web of falsehoods, the anxiety of confronting the repercussions of my actions froze me. Shame consumed me, and I struggled to appreciate the basic joys of pregnancy, such as feeling the baby move for the first time. The days moved slowly. I could feel the weight of the secret bearing down on me. Every time Carlos smiled at me or placed his hand on my abdomen, feeling the baby's first movement, I felt a strong sense of guilt. He knew nothing about the affair. He had no idea that I had deceived him, and I couldn't take the notion of hurting him. But every time I gazed into his eyes, I felt the oppressive weight of my own dishonesty. 9 months of pregnancy seemed like an eternity. I kept telling myself that everything would be okay and that I'd make things right. But I knew deep down that when the kid was delivered, the truth would be revealed. When that day finally arrived, I questioned my ability to handle the consequences. On the day of my son Luca's birth, everything seemed to halt. It was a wet morning, and the air seemed heavy. When the doctor placed the baby in my arms, a mix of elation and confusion overcame me. I stared down at my son's little face, dark brown complexion, and deep black eyes. It was then that I understood the truth was unmistakable. Luca looked precisely like Julian. The features, the eyes, and everything. There was no denying it. I felt the walls closing in around me. Carlos's expression changed as soon as he entered the room and saw his kid. His smile frozen and his gaze fixed on Luca's skin. There was no mistaking the shift in his mood. He fixed his focus on mine, and I could see the hesitation in his eyes. The room was suffocatingly silent. I could sense his uncertainty, hurt, and rage rising inside him, but he didn't say anything. He just stood there, trying to comprehend everything without asking me any questions. My heart broke. I realized the truth couldn't be buried much longer. The air in the room was heavy with tension, and each breath I took seemed to make the guilt worse. Carlos did not say anything. He only gazed at Luca. The quiet between us became louder with each passing second. The days that followed were fraught with anxiety. Carlos seldom spoke to me. His silence was scarier than any words could have been. Every time he held Luca, there was a look of concern in his eyes, a look of uncertainty that he couldn't conceal. I knew his skepticism became deeper with each passing day, but I lacked the strength to tell him the truth. I was frightened of what may happen if I did. I was fearful of losing him, losing my family, and most importantly, facing the repercussions of what I had done. The day of Luca's full-month celebration arrived. We had invited relatives and friends to celebrate, but Carlos remained distant. He did not appear to appreciate the celebration. He sat silently in the corner, his gaze never leaving the infant. He appeared to be trying to put together the puzzle of our lives, seeking the answer to the question that had been troubling him. After the visitors had departed, Carlos approached me. Despite his calm voice, every word he uttered pierced me deeply. "We need to do a DNA test," he stated. The words hit me hard. I'd been holding my breath for so long, trying to conceal everything, but suddenly there was no hiding the reality. I couldn't lie any longer. I could no longer pretend. Tears welled up in my eyes as I bent my head, embarrassed. I had no more power to deny the fact. I admitted everything. I informed him about Julian, about the affair, and the falsehoods I told him. The words tumbled out, strangled with grief and sadness. But, despite my confession, I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eyes. The embarrassment was overpowering. Carlos did not shout. He did not yell. He didn't even appear furious. He just stood there, speechless, as if trying to absorb the impact of what I'd said. His quiet was more damaging than any criticism or rage could have been. It left me feeling tiny and unimportant. Carlos did not sleep that night. I could hear him moving around the home and packing his belongings in silence. I sat in the dark with our son, unable to find anything to say. I wanted to beg him to remain and apologize, but I knew I didn't have the right to do so. Carlos had given me everything: love, trust, and a family, but I had wrecked it all by my own actions. When he finished packing, he turned to me one more time. His voice was scratchy as he continued, "I'm returning to Spain. I'll take Sophia with me. You live with your decision." Those remarks felt like a blow in the stomach. I wanted to stop him and beg him to remain, but I realized it was too late. I'd wrecked everything. Carlos had been an excellent husband, and I had thrown it all away in a moment of weakness. As he stepped out the door, Sophia dashed after him, her little form emerging in the opening. She looked at me with perplexity and grief in her eyes and said, "Mom, aren't you coming with us?" Her words struck me sharply, my own daughter questioning why I wasn't joining her, why I wasn't going to mend what I had broken. I shook my head, unable to respond. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I saw Carlos bend down to pick up Sophia and walk out the door, leaving me behind. The sound of the door closing rang throughout the home, reminding me of all I'd lost. The house, which had previously been full of laughter and love, was now empty. It was only me and Luca, and the frigid walls around us seemed to whisper memories of all my errors. The waves outside, which had previously brought me serenity, now felt like a continual accusation. In the days that followed Carlos's departure, I felt overwhelmed. I tried to concentrate on my baby, to love and care for him, but the weight of my guilt never left me. Luca was too little to grasp what had occurred. He had no idea that he was the result of a mistake, that his mother had sacrificed her family for fleeting moments of desire. But every time I gazed into his eyes, I felt the anguish of my betrayal. I pondered if I could ever make up for the harm I had caused. I worried if my love for Luca could ever make up for the faults I'd done. Some evenings, I lie awake in bed, looking out at the moonlit sea, wondering whether I'd ever forgive myself. The beach home had become an emotional prison, forcing me to face the repercussions of my actions. However, it was the only place I had left, where I needed to find the strength to rise again, not just for myself, but also for my kid. She was maturing every day, carrying both my flaws and my dreams. Life frequently places us in tough situations, when ephemeral emotions lead to life-changing decisions. However, keep in mind that every action has repercussions, and sometimes the cost is more than we could have anticipated. Before you allow your emotions to take over your mind, pause and consider what is actually important in life. Your family, those that adore you, and yourself. Don't allow moments of weakness to undermine what you've accomplished. More essential, learn to accept your mistakes. Only by acknowledging your mistakes and accepting responsibility for them can you begin the path to redemption. Forgiveness, whether from others or yourself, is the only way to recover. Thank you for hearing my story. I hope you learned from my mistakes. Life will never be perfect, but we can make it better by appreciating what we have. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more important content. Click the notification bell to stay up to date on new stories. See you at the next one.